New Family Search, from new.familysearch.org. If you follow the blogs, there was a blog today, or last night or today, that talked about the personal space, the new thing on Family Tree. And if you read the blog, it says, this was one more step in separating the programs. So there's a lot of things they've gone through that they probably didn't realize they were going to have to do when they started this process a couple of years ago. So, and if you like, I can go through the long explanation instead of the short one of that, but we'll do that some other time. Actually, the next class we're going to start on Monday is going to be Family Search. I'm going to do that series all the way through next week and into the following week. And it'll be all day long on Monday, 9, 1, and 5, 9, 1, and 5, not on Tuesday because I have some other things. Then on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 9 and 1, and Saturday at 10 and 2. Following Tuesday at 9, 1, and 5. So we'll have the class over and over again. But it'll be on Family Search, so we'll talk about those kinds of issues. Okay, now, what are we talking about when we talk about the program? Well, about 2 years ago in Tech, they, MyHeritage announced a couple of new programs that they had developed. One was based on their technology. It's called Super Search, and that's a way of looking at pedigrees and looking and finding people. But the second part of that was a technology called Smart Matches. Now, Smart Matches, this is the way. If most of the programs traditionally were looking for names and dates and places, they were matching people, and what you would get out of that match would be, you know, anywhere up to 1 million other people that had similar names and places and dates. Okay, but what happened with MyHeritage is that these people over in Tel Aviv, Israel, decided to go a little bit deeper, and they realized, I'm sure, and I'm just supposing this, but it's probably pretty accurate, they realized that families were actually patterns, and that if you had a family, say even if it was very common names, your father's name, the father's name was George Jones, the mother's name was Mary Jones, the kids' names were Thomas and Richard and Charles and Edward, okay? So you've got this list of things, but that's still a pattern. That name with that family is a particular pattern of a family. And so if you have your pedigree and someone else has their pedigree and they find the same pattern in the family, then they're pretty high possibility, it increases the possibility that they've got the right person. Well, what if you extend that back generations in time and forward generations in time? You take all the people in your pedigree and you say, here's your pattern of your pedigree. Which parts of the pedigree match patterns in other pedigree? And if you're looking for that overall pattern, looking at the entire number of people, whether it's 5 people or 500,000 people, you're still looking at patterns, and they can match those patterns with a very high degree of proficiency. And what MyHeritage said was that we can do that now at 97% accuracy. So when we tell you you have a match, that means 97 times out of 100 we have the right person, that is the person. Now, there was a lot of skepticism at Tech when they said that. I was kind of involved in the middle of it, so I was getting a lot of the comments. And 2 years later now, we're looking at everybody trying to match that. Everybody's trying to do the same thing because it works. And there's no question anymore that it's a lot more accurate. In fact, the accuracy has increased, if that's possible. It's not 100%, but it's increased over the past 2 years. But there's a reality check here. I mean, when you're talking about databases and you're talking about genealogy, you have to realize that it only works with the number of records that you actually have in your database. So if the records aren't there, then your family is not going to have, they're not going to find a lot of stuff. If your family comes from someplace where there are no records, or the records are no longer in existence, or they don't have them in this database, then they're not work. Plus the fact that each of these big companies, the programs that they have only go back accurately about 200 years, because that's about as far as when records start to become scarce. So if you're looking for somebody that lived back in the 1620 or 1580 or something like that. I have people come up to me all the time and say, I'm really having trouble finding my ancestor. And I say, well, when did they live? Well, they lived in England in 1540. And I go, yeah, you and everybody else is having trouble with that. You know, that's not a hard, that's kind of a given once you get back to the point where there may not be any records. So that's the problem. The problem is that as you keep going back in time, there's going to be fewer records, and the accuracy may decrease because there's not enough records to correct the problems or the discrepancies. Okay, so now when you have your family tree in here, what happens? Well, you put up your family tree, or you start putting in people on your family tree, and immediately they will come back, MyHeritage will come back, and tell you that you have matches. In this case, I put my tree in here quite a while ago, a couple of years ago or so, and right now I have 992 smart matches confirmed. That means the people on the other side, the ones with the other trees, have confirmed 992 people are the same as the ones in my family tree.
How much did you enter in?
Well, I put my whole database in here. But,
what's that?
well, that's like 6,000 people, or
That
6
was
or
a
7,000.
GEDCOM thing that you did?
Yeah, I just uploaded to GEDCOM. Okay, now I'm not recommending that anymore. And the reason why I wouldn't recommend it, we'll get into it, but the real reason is because you really need to get into the sources, because if you upload a GEDCOM, you're making an assumption that it's correct. And it may not be. So you may want to just start from scratch, put your name and your parents and maybe some grandparents in, and let the program give you sources as you build the program. You may see better results.
Just a question on the GEDCOM for those that still want a GEDCOM. Do you split your family between just your side and just your wife's side? Do you keep it all together? I've heard pros and cons for splitting it, for keeping it together, for just taking one family name and going this way and having a whole bunch of them.
Okay, let me explain how the program works when we get to sources, and then I'll answer that question. Basically, just a short answer without getting into the explanation, which we'll talk about in just a minute. The short answer is, if you and your husband are not related, then it's like two different trees. So that's simple. You could separate them. How do you know you're not related? That's the other problem that you have. And my parents, for example, were second cousins. And so if I had two separate trees, I'd have a whole lot of problems, because when you get back just a couple of generations, they got the same ancestors. Exact same ancestors. So I would keep mine together because I already know that's a fact. So I think that, you know, it just depends on what you want to do. We're going to see here, I have all of my wife's family in here, but that came because I did that combination years and years and years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And we worked on it jointly at the time. Now she has her own family tree. She has her own account with MyHeritage. She has her own account with Ancestry. She has all that's separate. She does her own work. So I kind of stay away from adding sources and doing things on her side, because it's going to be duplicative. I don't know what she's done. And so for me to do it would not work. So, but it's there, but I kind of skip over it. Now, what are we looking at? What we're looking at is a list of 165 family trees that claim that they have somebody that's the same as somebody in my family trees. So they're arranged in numerical order from the most to the least, and the top one, it says Ellsbury website, 349 matches. So what can we say about that? Do you think I'm related to this person? I think I probably know who they are if I have that many people in well, it's possible I don't. Okay, so let's look at that match. When you click on that, then you can look at the people that they say you have in common. So now here's the list of all 349 people down the list that we have in common. Then we come down here to one of my great uncles, and we see that that's probably the same person, and I review that match. It gives me a little screen right here that says that, and compares the two people. A couple of things that are interesting. I talked about the fact that this compares to the pattern of the two pedigrees. So you're looking at a lot of people at the same time, not just one or two. And you look here and it says show relatives 20. This one says show relatives 35. So if I click on those, it'll give me the list of the relatives on both sides. So now I have even better idea whether or not we match. Because we can go down here and see mother, father, sister, half-sisters, half-brothers, brothers and sisters all down here. Okay, so now I just look at that, and what's my conclusion? Obviously we're related in some way. Well, it turns out we're not. Frank Osbury is not my cousin, his wife is my cousin. So I really would have to know that whoever it was that was there was, you know, if they really were related or they just had the family tree up on one. But on the other hand, then it raises the question, do I want to collaborate or contact this person? Do I have some advantage in doing that? Well, that depends entirely. That's a very personal decision. That depends entirely on whether or not you are out there seeking relatives. I mean, you could be a person, I know a lot of people like this, who absolutely know no one in their family. They have no idea who their cousins are. They have never met a cousin. They don't know anybody. In the United States, that's not impossible. They could have moved all the way across the continent and never met the people. And now they have a program that gives them almost direct contact with relatives. So it's a great thing. But then there's other people who live in small towns or who are raised in Utah or Arizona, and all their family goes back generations in both states, and you are related to half the state of Utah or half the state of Arizona in my case. And so, are you going to try to contact all 10,000 people that you're related to? You know, it's not really practical or necessary, or you don't even, you know, in some cases they probably don't want to talk to you, or you don't want to talk to them. Anyway, so you've got relatives up there. Well, but so you have to make that decision. But if you do decide to talk to the person, I can confirm that match. If I confirm the match, immediately it sends Frank, or I can uncheck that, but it will send Frank a message so he'll know you have confirmed the match. And then you can also invite Frank to be a member of your family tree. Now or your family site. What that means is, if they're a member, he has his family tree and you have your family tree. You can't change his tree. He can't change your tree. No one can change your tree. But if you ask him to be a member and he accepts, then he can come in and edit your tree. So you might not want to do that unless you know somebody pretty good and know that they're going to be helpful. Okay? And the same with him. I still, even if he's a member of my tree, I can't do anything with his tree. Now, when you go on to one of any of the larger programs, they will have lots of family trees out there. Or they'll have their one big family tree or whatever. And then everybody can see everybody's trees. You can go down, you know, if you're in Ancestry and they show you 5,000 trees, you know, you can look at every single one of those. This program, unless you start sharing back and forth, you really can't see the other person's family tree. You can just see the ones you have in common. But you don't get their whole tree. It's not where you can just go click, click between all the different family trees and take a look at everybody. You're really working on your tree, and unless there's a collaboration established, then there's some security here that you're not going to be involved with people that you don't want to be involved with.
Do you need to respond to everyone that...
No. The question is, do you respond? The answer is, ignore it. Just family trees. Okay, there's the other part of it is that these people I mentioned are genealogists. And one thing that they've done that is not really very well done in some of the others, family search is a different category because that's only one tree. It's a unified tree. Everybody has access. Everybody can change things. Everybody can delete, add, do whatever they want. That's one tree. But in Ancestry, and this is not we're not trying to say one's better than the other, but on Ancestry, then you see all the family trees. But here on MyHeritage, you don't have a unified family tree. Everybody has their family tree, but the way that you see the other trees is limited through this matching process. And you basically, unless you're interested in finding a relative or you have a person, well, who would be interested in finding a relative? if your ancestors came from any of those little countries that I talked about a minute ago, you might want to chase down everybody that shows up on the family tree. Because you're going to find somebody who's going to be helpful, perhaps. But if you're sitting here in Utah or Arizona or someplace and you've got genealogy going back 150 years, you may be only interested if somebody were specifically claiming relationship through someone who was a brick wall person or was back far enough that you wanted some specific information. You have to remember these people may have photos, stories, well, too far back they're not going to have photos, but stories and whatever else from the people before, and maybe sources and things that you're interested in. Now, what about sources? Well, the program itself is supplying the sources. So we're not so concerned. This person has 3 sources. Well, yeah, and if it's the same person on my tree, they're going to give me the 3 sources too. I don't have to worry about, do they have more sources than I have? Because the program is generating the sources. And if you think about this, if I have if they have their pedigree here, and I have my pedigree here, and they've got somebody, and the program gives them a source on that, and then I have the same person, this program's going to say, oh, you just confirmed that this was your relative, so now this source is yours. I mean, that's basic.
So I can confirm without even sending a message.
I can confirm without sending a message, and that just says, yeah, I'm out there.
And that lets me have those sources there.
No, but it may add to your sources if that person has already confirmed other sources for that person.
Right.
They'll start popping up on your side.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, but the answer is the program's so efficient that that's probably already done that. Let me assure you one thing that's very important here. I can very, very, very confidently say that this program and Ancestry and their search and some of the other programs are getting better at it. We'll find things that you can't, that you will have no idea were there. Okay, apparently I can't get it to go back, so we're going to have to go back to Smart Matches. Actually, I have to go back to home and start over again. But I think I may have started waiting. Okay, here we go. Here's an important thing, though, and just the last thing on Smart Matches. See if I can get that to come up. When you are looking at a list of the matches in your, when I showed all the people list with the, just a list of the 2 columns with all the people. Up the top of that, there's a link to send an email directly to the owner of that website, that site. So if I click back here when I've gotten here and go up here, you'll see there's contact Frank with the little email symbol. So I can send him an email message and talk to him through the program. Now this is what happened. My wife was helping at the Mesa Family Search Library. A lady came in and explained that she had been an immigrant from Denmark, had been in the country for 45 years and had no contact at all for that time period with her family in Denmark. And she's now interested in finding out if they were around or still alive or what was going on. Well, Anne said, well, okay, let me look in my copy of MyHeritage. So she started a new family tree for the lady in MyHeritage, put her name in, and a few seconds later popped up with matches in another family tree, and she said, oh, that's my cousin. And so Anne put a message in, sent a message to the person right through MyHeritage. And a few days later, it didn't happen instantly, but a couple of days later, Anne got the response and contacted the lady again. And that turned out to be her cousin, and he said, by the way, I know where your brother is, and he's still alive. Okay, now this is the way the program is supposed to work. In other words, as you get your, as you increase contacts here, you're finding people that you may or may not have ever had a contact with. Now, another question comes up, well, what about live people? Well, as you'll see, they have records for all the live people in the United States right now. They have 840 million public record information records in here that'll find people that are live. So traditionally, we've always said to people as they came into the family history centers, well, we can't help you find your father that's still alive, or we can't help you find your mother, we have to go back to the people who are dead. That's no longer the case. We can start putting them in these programs and let the program find those people. And what it'll do is it'll come up with an address list and a telephone number list of everybody, of every place you've ever lived. Put your own names in and see what happens. You'll get the list.
What's the little crown?
They're the owner of that tree. Yeah. It also means that, see, that's it. Here's the site manager, and here's his contact, so that means he's the guy. He's also put some things in his profile and been involved with the program. All that. There's kind of like, it's a social networking program, basically, and so it works that way. Okay, now let's go to sources real quick. And the reason I spent so much time there on smart matches was not because they're more important than sources, but because understanding how all that works, you're going to get a lot of smart matches, and it starts to be very confusing if you're not understanding what the program's doing and making those decisions. But here we are with record matches. Now, what happens here is I have 7,990 matches in 68 collections. And so far, I've been able to process about 400 of those. But you can see the list here: Find a Grave, England Births, U.S. Public Records, Newspaper Archive, Billion Graves, U.S. Social Security Death Index, 1900 Federal Census, 1930 Census. Okay, this is an example. First of all, understand that the list of collections here that you're seeing is based on my ancestry. So, I mean, your results will vary, as they say, because my family came from the United States back to 1620, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and 2 lines in Denmark. That's it. So I don't have all the other countries out there that might be thrown in here if you were looking for people from other countries. And so don't look at this and say, oh, well, that's all they have, because they don't. And then one other thing that's kind of interesting is that most of the other big companies like Family Search, MyHeritage, Ancestry, etc., are about every week telling you how many more millions of records they put in their program. Well, these people put in those millions of records. They have, I don't have any. I've got like 5.5 billion records in here, and unless you're watching their blog, you're probably never going to hear about it. It's just not there out in your face. For example, one of the collections that they got recently was they picked up access to and all the images for the Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish records from Scandinavia, and they have them all completely indexed and searchable. They have the church books, the house censuses, the civil registers, all of
And
that.
MyHeritage?
Okay, so if you're looking for Swedish records, like my wife went in here and started looking for Swedish records, and for the first time found a family that we had never found before. And she was able to split out, the children were wrong, some were in a different family, and she was able to split out the families. She had to go further than this, so she went to some of the Swedish records, but that was where she got the information initially, was from MyHeritage.
So all of these records here are sources that the company has, not that someone's individually put in.
This is the ones they're searching. These are all the databases. And if you think about it, here's like the 1930 census. Well, I had a project here at BYU with an independent study class that I was looking up all the people in one family in all the census records for that family. And it was my great-grandfather and 2 wives and 17 children. So I was looking at anybody who was born, and I'd look at the 1850, 1860, 1870, 1880, 1900, 1900, all the censuses. And you can imagine how long that took. I mean, it took me, I had it on a spreadsheet, and I was looking at all the families and their wives, and the wives and husbands, and it took me about weeks, couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, working as much as I could on it to develop this huge long list of just one family. And now what's happening? This program is doing that all automatically for free for me. It's looking up everybody in my line, not just that one family, everybody in every family in every census record. And the other one up here, if I go back up in the list, you'll see up here is find a grade, and I have 761 matches, I have 649 pending, and I would put this out to my kids when I was paying money for the program, or when people were paying money for this program. And what happened was that, just in the matter of fair thing, I think I've had this program for free ever since I've been on it a couple of years, because I've been working with the company back and forth and back and forth. So I did convert my account over to an LDS free access account, but that's where we are. But find a grade, for example, what if I said to you, I will, and in fact the program, by the way, the program costs somewhere around $250, $260 for the whole program. And I said to them, if I said to you, here's what I'll do. I will hire you, and if you will look at my database of around 6,000 to 7,000 people and look up every single one of them in Find a Grade and find the links, and then give me the links with a list of all the people in Find a Grade, I'll pay you $250. And most of the people go, my grandkids all said, how about $5 an hour? No, they didn't really say that, but that's what they thought. So, no, the answer is that they're doing this for you for free. You're getting all of the people looked up in any of these databases constantly. And if there's updates or additions, then they look at the new stuff.
That's where you get your sources and confirmation.
Absolutely. Now, let me show you what happens, for example, with Find a Grade. I go here to Find a Grade and get a match and look at the matches. So here's all the people in my database, most of whom are in my wife's family. And we will jump down to somebody in my family. Not on that page. How about a little ways out? For some reason, my wife has a lot more people that show up in sources than mine do. Okay, here's my great-grandmother in Find a Grade. So if I click on that, then it'll bring up a copy and let me determine, and this is the point. Here's what I have on mine on the left-hand side, and then here's what they have on that record. That's what's on the record. The only thing I'm interested here is this my person? I don't care, the information may not be correct, it may be spelled wrong, the wrong names, the wrong dates, whatever. But if that's my person, then that's the source. And then it's up to me to determine which parts of that source are actually valid and for me to include. And so now what I can do is, if I need to, I can click out and go right over to look at the whole record on Find a Grade and see what they have. Now a lot of times Find a Grade will have all the other people in that cemetery listed on the Find a Grade entry. And so I've spent a whole day, whole afternoon from one record. From one click on MyHeritage, I end up putting records into Family Search, Family Tree, or whatever for 2 or 3 hours. Never having to go back to MyHeritage because I keep following all the Find a Grade links. So this is what they're doing. And of course you can put the photos and everything up onto MyHeritage also. But here what I do, you'll notice what happened down here. As soon as I put that record up, they're so confident that they've got the right person. They've now given me 7 more records for the people that appear for that lady. Now, I have almost 8,000 records sitting out there, but every time I click on a record, I'm getting anywhere from 2 to 30, and one yesterday I saw, a couple of days ago, I saw one, 93 records showed up at one click.
And those are almost always the right person.
97% the right person.
Wow, compare that to like searching Ancestry or Family Search, and
Yeah.
you end up with hundreds of names, and maybe there's one in there that's right.
Right, but this is, This is when you're letting them do this. Now, if you went out and searched in MyHeritage, you'd have the same results. But if you let them do it, and